The Iron Claw from Sean Durkin. It's a sports biopic about the famous Von Erich brothers' wrestling career and their family's hardships. In this movie, we follow Kevin Von Erich, played by Zac Efron. He is the eldest brother of the Von Erich family and the Texas NWA heavyweight champion. He lives under the thumb of his father Fritz, played by Holt McCallany. He is the textbook father trying to vicariously live his sports dreams through his kids. The culture of their household is quite unhealthy. Their father plays favorites with them and really doesn't seem to care much about them beyond their athletic careers. Fritz's parenting style fluctuates anywhere between old-fashioned and borderline psychologically abusive. There are times where he creates the illusion of choice for his kids while clearly still trying to mold them into wrestling champions, because all he really wants in life is to have a world champion title in his home. So if you thought this was just a wrestling movie, it's not. Sure, it's about a family of wrestlers, but the family dynamic is what takes center stage. This movie shines the light on masculinity, or more specifically, toxic masculinity. With notions that men don't cry and that vulnerability is a weakness, it shows us a group of boys conditioned to emulate their father's idea of what it means to be a real man. There is an unimaginable loss that we see this family go through, and we see the effect that grief has on people who refuse to mourn properly. This movie's commentary on toxic masculinity isn't the most unique, but it still works and arguably still needs to be said to some people out there watching. So Zac Efron finally landed himself a good role with this movie. Pretty much everything else he had done in his acting career leading up to this point was pretty much nothing spectacular. But this could be a solid turning point for his career. And also, holy crap, this man is a Hulk in this movie. His performance is subtle for most of this movie, which makes sense because this character that he's playing is kind of milquetoast. This becomes clear early on when he goes on a date with one Pam Atkinson, played by Lily James. He has basically no game whatsoever talking to her, and she basically has to ask herself out using his mouth. It's in these moments that you really understand what kind of person he is. His life solely revolves around wrestling and his family, so much so that he has a mild disconnect with other people, and the lack of enthusiasm for other things. This makes sense considering the lack of enthusiasm present in his home life while his parents are around. There's a really great dynamic between the brothers in this movie. There's love and camaraderie, but also envy and feelings of inferiority. I gotta say that being the youngest of 5 kids with 3 older brothers, I really think that a lot of viewers that come from dude-heavy households will relate in some way. The youngest brother, Mike, played by Stanley Simmons, doesn't really care much for wrestling, so naturally he is at the bottom of his father's favorite kid list, which is actually communicated to them. Recognizing all the hardships that the boys face, I do think that his story had the saddest evolution. The kid just wanted to play music and he really did not get the support that he needed because their household just isn't a safe space. The dad is toxic and the mother just doesn't want to talk or try and solve anything. So the second half of the movie is where the bulk of the emotions are. The first half shows us their dynamics, some of their struggles, and their rise in the world of wrestling. I do like that this movie doesn't shy away from showing us that wrestling behind the scenes is just fake, but it still kind of respects the sport despite exposing it. The pacing did not always feel totally spot on, especially when Kerry, played by Jeremy Allen White, jumps into the ring. There were parts of the story that just felt a bit expedited once he joins the gang. And there were a few moments that could have been emotional, but honestly, they just felt a little bit empty just because of how very stoic the characters were. It's just hard for us to really feel those sad moments when the characters are generally doing a pretty good job of remaining strong. And the boys showing very little resistance to their father's influence on their careers felt like a missed opportunity. This is already a dramatized take on the Von Erich story, so even if there wasn't actually much friction between Fritz and his kids, I think that adding more of it to the story could have made it feel like more of an emotional struggle. The boys also take turns going for the gold as per their father's direction, making the story feel a little bit aimless. The lack of agency that these characters had left me feeling less invested in their aspirations, just because it doesn't always feel like they really want a world champion title deep down. But this movie easily makes up for these little shortcomings through brotherly love, some utterly tragic moments, and a perfect ending that is more than capable of bringing tears to your eyes. This movie's good. It's got a beautiful story and a compelling take on masculine family dynamics that will eventually make your heart sink. It's a solid watch for most, but I think it will hit those of you with siblings the hardest. Being able to relate to the brothers is what I really enjoyed most about this movie. But if you were much more interested in a traditional traditional sports movie, then this isn't it. It's much more about family than it is wrestling. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please consider giving it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my reviews of American Fiction and Society of the Snow.